Welcome again to another edition of Not Your Father's Data Center. I am your host, Raymond Hawkins. And today you will not hear me talk much at all because we have the great Bill Kleyman with us. He is going to man the microphone, which will make my job really easy. He's awesome to talk to, a friend of the program. We love him at Compass. He is far more entertaining to listen to than I am. After I get through his illustrious array of titles, we are going to hand him the microphone and let him talk about his background and how he got in the data center business. So, board member and advisor at Neuro, AFCOM Data Center World Program Chair, and a contributing editor at both Data Center Frontier and Data Center Knowledge. So, if you read about the data center business, Bill's had something to do with it. If you care about our standards and AFCOM, Bill's had something to do with it. And Neuro, he's all over that place. So, Bill, welcome to Not Your Father's Data Center. You know what my kids say every time they hear that? They go, "But Dad, it is my dad's data center." So there's only two people that this show title doesn't work for.
Yeah, well, I think my 5-year-old doesn't quite know what a data center is yet. She just understands all the blinking lights and whatnot. But you know what? I love it, and thanks for having me here, Raymond. I really appreciate it.
So we're super happy you joined us. And if you're willing, we're going to let you dive right into telling us about you because I think you're pretty well known in our industry, in our space, and lots of folks know a lot about you, but I don't think they know everything about you. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get in the data center business? Let's dig into some of that and see where that takes us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and everybody listening. It's a pleasure to be here on this show. The data center industry, just technology in general, is something that's near and dear to my heart. It's actually funny if you go on my LinkedIn profile. I think literally the byline or the very top is like, "I love technology," and then I go on to tell you why I like it. There's a really good book out there. It's an Amazon bestseller that I had a chance to co-author. It's called Greener Data that outlines the beginning of or the nexus of my career and what I've been doing. I got a nice little bulky chapter in that book. So, okay, everybody, we're gonna be friends really quick. My name is not really Bill. It kind of is. I was born. My name is Vitali, and I was born in Kiev, Ukraine. And I came to the United States in the early '90s. And the reason I'm telling you this is because Raymond and I had a quick little chat. He's like, Bill, in the same level of excitement. Bill, how did you get into
Yes.
this data center industry? How did it all start? And what's fascinating is that my nexus actually started when I was very young, in Soviet Ukraine in Kiev, and my brother he used to compete in there's no other way to put it, telegraph competitions. It was the switch and everything. And he would let me sit on his lap and he would put like these big headphones on my head. And he taught me numbers and some letters. And I was like 6 or 7 years old and I would be able to communicate with people all over then Soviet Russia and obviously Ukraine as well. And even at that really sort of young age, I was fascinated by how we could bring people together and closer by using technology. And obviously, yes, phones were available. This was in the late '80s, but it was absolutely fascinating, and I really enjoyed the concept and the solutions, and just the idea behind using these tools to bring people together and closer. And I carried that excitement on through my high school career, where I did a bunch of AP classes, definitely around things like coding and comp sci. And I realized that my passions lie more around physical infrastructure, that design, architecture, engineering, and so on. I feel like I'm an anomaly here, Raymond, that I'm telling you this story because I'm not a transplant. I started off in the data center industry. I actually went to a trade school and got a network engineering undergrad, and then a master's in business, and then another master's in information security. And from graduating with my network engineering undergraduate, I've been in the data center industry. I had a chance to work for the country's largest Citrix partner for a while. Left them as their CTO, had a chance to spend time in DevOps, spent 4 years working with obviously co-location data center industry with my former company called Switch. And now I get a chance to dive into and work with all of these crazy things that you're hearing about, like ChatGPT, generative AI, large language models. But what's really fascinating is that these tools that I'm working with right now, we can talk about them, are things that are democratized for our industry, Raymond, the data center industry and telecommunications, and how we can be capturing the power of these technologies and not just leaving it and relegating it to the hyperscalers. So I feel that I'm lucky. I was at a 7 by 24 conference just recently, And I was at a big panel. We were talking about education and young people in our industry. And I asked the question, all right, everybody, how many in this room are native to the data center industry? And by the way, everybody listening to this, are you native to the data center industry, or are you a musician, a doctor, accountant? I was the only one that raised his hand because everyone else was in some way adopted. I'm lucky. I love this industry. I love working with critical infrastructure. I'm absolutely fascinated by everything that we do every single day. And I love showcasing and sharing with the industry that we are so much more than big buildings and blinking lights. I mean, this industry is really cool.
All right, so I'm sticking with Vitali because I like it and
I
I
like
think I can say it properly.
you
So I'm
can
sticking with Vitali for the rest of this recording. You weaved right through Kiev, and then you went into the telegraph, and then you jumped into the data center business. Hold on,
Okay.
Kiev and Ukraine are in the news a little bit for the last year. So let's back up. How did you get from? Because you're in Chicago now, I think,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a big journey in there that we'd love to hear a little bit about. So get us from 6-year-old Vitali working, communicating via telegram to other telegraphs to other people, and get me to how you're in the United States. There's got to be a fun story there, a fascinating story. So let's hear some of that journey.
I feel like I wish we had more time to talk about some of this because I'm giving you like the Cliff's Notes version of it. So yeah, born in Soviet Ukraine in Kiev, and I'd say things started to sort of go downhill when Chernobyl happened in 1986. We actually moved to Crimea for a little while just to try and escape it, making sure that I didn't have any health issues and so on. And we stayed there for a little while and then went back right around 88 and 89. We pretty much saw the writing on the wall that, the Soviet government wasn't going to last very long.
So Vitali, for people that aren't as old as you and me, give them the distance from where you lived to the Chernobyl incident. And I know you moved south down to Crimea. Give people a little bit of Eastern European geography.
Pripyat to Kiev, it's not that long. It's probably like a 20-30 minute drive or so.
So for folks who don't appreciate this, the largest nuclear accident on our globe's history was less than an hour from your house.
Yeah,
So when you say you moved, you guys were getting out of town.
yeah, we definitely. So overall, it's between yeah, it's about an hour drive, hour and a half hour drive, I would say. Chernobyl's a little bit further away. It's probably like 50 to 60 miles from where we were. Still not, very far
Yeah.
nuclear.
I just want folks listening to appreciate when you say you guys were, hey, Chernobyl was an incident. It wasn't like it was a docu-series that we got to watch 40 years later. This was your family an hour's drive away. This accident's happening in at the time, Soviet controlled Ukraine, and probably not the best flow of information about the accident.
No, we didn't know what happened effectively. And as you remember, they had a parade. I think literally like the next day in the city of Pripyat, where somebody on the roof was taking a picture of the green glow of the graphite reactors melting and spewing out iridium and cesium into the.
Now,
And it,
Vitaly, I've read about this. I was not born yet, so I don't think I get to pass that one. Yes, I remember.
yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't get that one out with a straight face. I wasn't born yet. Unfortunately, I was. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. You try to make it with a
All right. So Chernobyl happens. Mom says we got to go.
literally mom and dad. Dad actually had to stay back and work a little bit. But me, my mom, and my brother and some extended family hopped on a train literally and went to Crimea. And that's actually where we learned what happened. We had an idea what was going on. It was either the Americans launched the bomb or, because we were being told to get the heck out of Dodge. And we weren't sure what was going on. But when we got to the south, to Crimea, you were able to like tune into like bootleg European radio stations, and you could hear like they're like, okay, something happened in northern Ukraine, like right by the Belarus border, and we're like, okay, we think we know what's going on here. And that was sort of like that was the nexus behind a lot of the decision making that we had to sort of get out of not just out of Dodge, but I get out of the country. And many folks stayed. We had some family members and some friends definitely stay back. But when we decided to leave, that was right around the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet government at the time that we announced that we wanted to leave, they took our passports, they tore them up, and they called us traitors to the nation because you're either Russian or you're nothing, which is, Raymond and everybody listening, not unlike what's happening to the Ukrainian culture right now by the Russians. And so we basically had to get rid of everything. We had, just a couple $100. I had a couple of toys with me, a couple of backpacks, and we were political asylum refugees living in Europe for a while until we finally got a political asylum visa to the United States and came to good old Brighton Beach, Brooklyn in the early 90s, and then moved into a little apartment in north of Chicago. It was in the city, just the north side. Lived our extended family in one little apartment and literally built everything from scratch.
And so this is the late 80s, early 90s when early 90s by the time you get to Chicago,
Yeah.
yes?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome stuff. You won't hear many data center podcasts where you're going to get a firsthand account of fleeing Chernobyl. That is pretty amazing stuff. So that's why I wanted to make sure you got it in there, because it's not just, hey, we decided to leave Ukraine. This was, we got to get out of Dodge, and
Yeah.
how it led you to end up being now an American, which we're so excited about.
I love being here. It's this is an absolutely wonderful country. Nowhere else I'd rather be. For those listening, that series Chernobyl that was done, that was very very well done. Very good perspective, very open and honest. If that's like the one thing that you watch about what happened in my home country, to really try to embrace and understand the situation, that's a good one. That's a good one. You're get a tissue or two already, because we obviously had friends and people that we knew responding to that incident. And, some of those folks are going in nothing but like a gas mask and a, paper thin radioactive suit. When studies show that in the center of the radioactive zone, you couldn't really spend more than 30 to 40 seconds shoveling that stuff off a roof where, people were spending more than that. But, kind of goes to show you the state of the things back then.
So I did watch. I can't remember if it's Netflix or what it is, but I did watch the whole miniseries, and
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that struck me, and the lack of respect for human life out of the Soviet Union. I think that's the thing I left with, is thinking that their lack of appreciation for the safety of their people, for the sanctity of life, that the image of the state and technological advancement and the honoring the country from a perspective of, hey, look how great we are, was more important than the humans that live there. And that to me was probably the biggest impression, and the biggest heartbreak watching that whole series.
I mean, it goes to say, like, there's a nuclear meltdown and the Russian government decides, hey, let's have a parade.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. And let's tell everybody it's not our fault. It wasn't us.
It's
Yeah,
fine. It's
just
no problem. Don't worry. Green glow is normal.
yeah, nothing to see here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible stuff. Well, we don't get too many folks that got to live through what an incredible part of history, and talking to us on the podcast. So grateful to hear that part of your story, Bill. And I like Vitali. I may have a hard time going back to Bill, but
You're welcome to do it. Raymond, that's part of what happened. So when we came to America, if I'd say my name to another American, Vitali, people say it just fine. But if they read my name, they say like Vitally or Vitali. They maybe sound like an herbal supplement. And so
yeah, yeah,
my mom, she asked an American friend, she's like, well, what does Vitali sound like? And they were like, it sounds like William, I guess. And my mom was like, he's good. We go change now. And so
yes,
to like, my American counterparts, it's Bill. In high school, I was Billy. And obviously William. And then all of my Slavic speaking friends that I, still interact with, it's Vitali. They say Vitalik with a K. Right. Like
yeah,
Vitalik Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev right now.
yeah, yeah. Former boxer. Hey, just mayor now.
Former
Yeah,
boxer.
yeah.
That's him and his brother.
Former world heavyweight champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Right,
Yeah,
Raymond.
not just boxer. That's
That's
right,
right.
former heavyweight champion. Yeah, boy, the way I've enjoyed some of his interviews during this last year and a half, and his passion for his homeland and his people and his city.
I feel it.
Fascinating stuff. I promise we're going to talk about the data center business, but I got to ask one more Kiev, Ukraine family. So you, as we chatted earlier, you did mention a fascinating fact about your mom. So folks that listen know I'm a Marine vet, but I do want to hear you. We got to give props to your mother, and we got to talk a little bit about her service in the military, just a little bit. Sprinkle
It
some of
was
that in. Yeah, got to
was
hear
in
it.
the it was in the Soviet Army. I honestly have not asked her very many details. I know that she was
We don't want to have to kill all our listeners, so
no,
nothing top
no.
secret here.
I
But
I can tell you that she was a very good shot, quote, top of her class with a sniper rifle.
very nice.
And she, I mean, she literally was like, oh, I never missed. I'm like, "Oh my god, mom, I don't think I can hear this conversation from my mother." Um, what was interesting is that while she was doing that work, my dad, he was in the Army Corps of Engineer in the Soviet Army, Soviet Ukraine Army, I should say. I knew that he was designing missile silos. What I didn't know, it was for those missiles. Yeah, those
Yeah,
missiles.
those. Yeah,
Uh, and so I had no idea, and honestly, I found out a lot about their military service here in the United States when I was, like, in my late 20s just because I never really asked. They never got a chance to keep their medals, none of their all of that stuff, just you again, you're either Russian or you're nothing. I
right.
think my dad maybe got a chance to keep, like, 1 or 2 service medals, if I'm not mistaken, same thing with my mom, but very, very, very little, if anything. They don't talk about their military career.
Yeah,
My mom does, maybe less so, maybe because of what she did. My
yeah.
dad will talk about his engineering feats all the time, though.
Love the story of your mom. Love her background, and love the story of how you guys got to America. So thank you for giving us a little piece of you, Bill. That's super awesome.
Thank
Let's switch
you.
gears and let's talk a little bit about the data center industry, although it will pale in comparison to your background, which I love and enjoy getting to hear about. Like you highlighted, I was in the systems integrator business for years. I filled buildings full of computers. Walking in and out of data centers. I only ever had one question. Hey, can you tell me when the circuits are going to be provisioned? Because that's when my servers could plug in and I could get paid, because I didn't get paid till they knew their servers worked. And then 10, almost 11 years ago now, someone said, hey, have you ever looked into the data center business? And I was like, wait, you mean someone owns those buildings? Like, duh. And I got to join our friends at Digital Realty and learn the industry. And it has been an incredible 10, 11 years of my life now. And I love to say that we're really the foundation upon which digital transformation happens, right? Our industry occasionally will get an elbow to the ribs about, oh, you guys use a lot of power. You're not a very green industry. What are you doing? And I always joke with folks. I say, hey, just grab your phone. Just tell me what on here you'd like to stop doing. When we'll shut it down. You don't want to have food brought to the house anymore? No problem. Postmate, we're done with that. Uber Eats, we're done with that. You don't want to catch a ride to the airport? No problem. We'll kill Uber. You don't want to order plane tickets online? No problem. We'll kill that. Right? Just tell you don't want to watch Netflix? No problem. I mean, it is really the foundation for digital transformation. The stuff that we've all become accustomed to here all lives in our buildings. And what a joy to get to help provide changing the technology landscape for the world in building the place for that to live. I really think that's what we do, and it's been a joy.
No, I hear you, and and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more. I feel like we've seen a transition happening in this industry where we used to say that we are the foundation of the internet. Now I firmly believe that we are the foundation for humanity, and I think that's really special. I think that is, a change in perspective, especially with all this crazy stuff that we're hearing about AI, generative solutions. We are shifting the kinds of things that we are supporting for everyday life. I mean, it's really special.
Yeah, here, here. I don't think it's too far a reach that the foundation that humanity is using to launch itself into all of that's next is really built on the critical infrastructure industry, the data center and a business. So, talk with us a little bit. Everybody wants to talk about what's happening, how's our industry changing, what's going on, and clearly the thing that makes the news and that everyone hears and sees is Chat GPT and generative AI, and it's changing the world, and machine learning, and all the great acronyms. But talk a little bit about, from your perch, what you see as the technology industry and really mankind shifting what happens inside those ones and zeros and blinking lights.
So, at the highest level possible, I want to make sure people understand what these systems are, and certainly how they work. Generative AI is a type of machine learning, right? So AI is at the very top, overarching umbrella definition term, and generative AI is a type of that, which at its core works by training models, software models, to make predictions on based on data without requirement for explicit programming. That sounds really detailed and complicated. Traditional AI models, the old school stuff, right, from a while ago, was designed to identify underlying patterns, data sets based on probability distribution, and find similar patterns and so on. Think of it as trying to train a child as to what a picture of a dog looks like. That's what it is, right? The more pictures you show, the more accurate it is. And the more it's able to define using a neural network what a dog looks like, what it should be, even different kinds of dogs. Generative AI is the same thing, but now instead of teaching the child to recognize a dog, you're teaching a child to both recognize the dog and then draw it, right? Paint it, your own interpretation. So it's still based off that same concept and model of the data, except now you're creating images or text or videos or all of these other kinds of other systems. And these are done through different kinds of transformative, generative kind of technologies. You've got generative adversarial networks, transformers, and some of these other ones. Now, here's the big difference. I'll say this in terms that we can understand. A single Google search can power a 100-watt light bulb for 11 seconds, consuming about zero point 0.3 kilowatt hours of energy per one Google query. There's roughly between 80, 90 to 100,000 queries in a second. A single ChatGPT query, so Raymond asks ChatGPT a question just one time, is about 50 to 100 times more powerful than that, consuming anywhere between as little as maybe 1 to 2, upwards of 3, 4, and 5 kilowatt hours per query. Now, if Raymond comes out and says, I want a 50 slide deck built in PowerPoint, that's going to be a little bit more, power consuming. When we start to take a look at AI, generative AI, everybody listening, please understand this is not Zoom. This is not EVs. You're going to flood the data centers with all this information. We don't have a precedent for this technology. And just to give you an idea, I think it was the first 2 months that they had 1 million users, active users. And over the course of 9 months, they're just shy of 1 billion active users, unique users on ChatGPT. We don't have anything to compare this to. Not Instagram, not the most popular TikTok applications, nothing.
Has Facebook hit a billion users? I mean, now that I think about it, are they even? And they've been here 20 years, right? I mean, a billion users. Just
We can check as we talk. But in that sense, Raymond and everybody listening, when the foundation of the internet came out, traditional data centers kind of sort of lost the race. We were relegated to traditional workloads, VMware, Citrix, Microsoft, all of these other tool sets. And again, the building of the internet was relegated to these big hyperscalers, the larger ones. They were able to build a lot of that foundation. Right now, it feels like we're losing that race again to the large hyperscalers. The data center industry is starting to catch up. They're seeing that their customers are asking for generative AI, large language model training capacity, or just general AI support. And these customers are reluctant to go to the cloud. They don't want their data to be trained against. They want to pay lower prices. They want to have data locality and data gravity. So for the data center industry, AI, and more specifically, this modern approach to generative AI is a massive opportunity to capture a business that's going to be growing, that's hungry to leverage this information. But to that sense, we're going to have to start thinking about maybe designing things a little bit differently. Now, you mentioned something, Raymond, about sort of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the not in my backyard kind of conversation. I just wrote an article on data center knowledge. It's titled "Get Off My Lawn, You Crazy Data Centers." And if you haven't had a chance to read that, please do, because some of those protesters that I saw for the first time in my career in Virginia responded to the article in the LinkedIn
very
thread.
cool. Yeah.
I loved what they had to say. And I actually offline connected with one of them. And she's like, Bill, I'm not an idiot. I don't want to go back to the Stone Age. I don't want to write stuff on pieces of paper. I'm not against data centers. What I'm against is the following. And she gave me a really good perspective. I know we're going on a tangent here. She's like, Bill, I know you're responding to a market need. And then she goes on to explain that places like Northern Virginia, for example, their government, because they want that business, sometimes they will sign contracts and documents for energy consumption that's from fossil fuels instead of renewable fuels. And that's what bothers them. They're like, can you help us? We need this leadership from the data center industry to go back to government and assign more pressure to say, yes, this business is growing here. Yes, it needs to be here, but please stop signing contracts that expand on fossil fuels. That's not an illegitimate request, and I think that's fair. So there's a lot of learning and growth, and I honestly think that things like generative AI, that's just going to exasperate the challenges. It's going to make it a lot louder. I mean, Raymond, South Park did an episode on ChatGPT. That's, if you can't go mainstream than that, then there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, you've arrived. All
Yeah.
right, before my friends at Facebook and now Meta hammer me, 2.9 billion global users. It took them 5.1 years to get to a billion.
Right.
So, multi years, right? Half a decade. So thank you, Google, for providing those answers at my fingertips while we talked about it. But to your point, I mean, a billion users measured in months, it's just the growth is astronomical.
Absolutely wild. And what we've been doing at Neuro has been really special. So it's been the democratization of these technologies. So bringing it into data center partners. 4 years spent at Switch, I learned something, and this is actually summarized beautifully by Peter Gross, who's one of my mentors. Is that the data center industry loves innovation as long as it's 10 years old. Well, we don't have 10 years to wait on ChatGPT and generative AI. We have maybe months, and we're already like 6 months behind. So one thing that I learned is that for these technologies to actually be adopted by co-locations that serve enterprise and different kinds of customers, is that you have to allow them to continue to be good at selling space and power and nothing else. So we are a platform that sits on top as a Kubernetes engine that continues to help data center customers, partners sell space and power, but in the sense of actually creating an architecture that's dense, that is capable of supporting GPT generative AI ready data centers so that these leaders stop experiencing revenue bleed by sending these customers to the cloud, which sometimes that those instances for GPUs aren't even available. They're grayed out. So I want our industry to capture this market and be a leader in it.
Boy, our friends at NVIDIA, it's changing their world, isn't it?
I mean, these guys have been experiencing the craziest roller coaster ever, right? From
Yeah.
cryptocurrency, yeah, we love Nvidia,
Yeah.
coming down, and then like now generative AI, everything's using GPUs.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I'm glad you connected the dots back to crypto, right? That was everybody had to have the latest miner and had to have the latest processor, put it in the farthest reaches where we can get the cheapest power. And then that whole thing went south. I'll be tactful about how I say it. And now what AI is doing for the GPU is just off the charts. It's crazy.
It's absolutely wild. And just really quick, the GPU power isn't always needed, right? You only need GPUs when you're doing large language model training. When you're doing slight iterative changes to ChatGPT, you don't need that kind of horsepower. Or if you're doing inference training, like for example, Raymond, you asked GPT a question and it retrains the model just because of what you asked, it becomes a little bit better. That also doesn't require massive amounts of GPU. You can do all that stuff on CPUs. That's a part of creating a foundation built around AI ethics, AI transparency, and most of all, AI sustainability so that people using this technology have a very deep, I want to use this word, intimate understanding of what these tools are, so that it's not foreign to them. I think it's important. That's a part of the democratization process for people to understand what this is. The kinds of use cases that we've been applying to this have been absolutely wild, just absolutely crazy stuff. It's been really fascinating.
Yeah, and changing so fast. That's the thing that's gotten me is how quickly what people are doing and how they're building tools and how they're engaging with it. Shocking how fast. And we used to. I'm going to date myself again. We used to say that things changed at internet speed, right? That's dated, term now, right? When this AI speed has just been a blur. How quickly it's become a real thing, and how quickly it's become transformative in so many parts of our economy and now to our business, right? It is changing what happens in our data centers radically.
Agreed 100%. And one thing I want to eliminate this is fear. It's not going to replace your jobs. It's a co-pilot. It really is a co-pilot, right? In every single use case that we've been designing this, it's there to increase value, even for junior engineers and junior lawyers that we're working with, junior service people. Instead of looking at one project for 8 hours, this technology allows you to look at 8 projects, over the course of 1 hour each, and then keep pushing forward. The tools are so powerful, and I know we might not have enough time to even go into some of these use cases, but they're extraordinary. I'll give you one really crazy example, Raymond.
Yeah, get
Uh,
us one. Yeah.
just one, right? So we're working with a data center services company. This company services both manufacturer equipment as well as physical facilities, and they have so much data that's being ingested. And some of it's not shared, some of it's in isolated repositories. The goal is to ingest all of it in a privately held model, but then also train it against all of these manufacturers' constantly updated manuals, field manuals, drawings, recommendations. Also, train it against field technician notes. I mean, everything from the back of a napkin drawing to specific requirements and documentations around IP addresses. So Raymond from Compass gives me a call and starts explaining an issue to me. What I'm capable of doing is we're actually going to be deploying an audio engine built with GPT that's going to listen to Raymond as he's talking. Now, I'm listening to you, and just to the left is a screen. that's going to be saying, okay, Raymond is discussing data center number 4. Cool. Now he's talking about rack row number 3 in that data center. Cool. Now he's specifically talking about this switch. He's describing this issue. Well, it looks like this patch wasn't updated, which actually fixes the exact issue that he's talking about right now. So I, as a technician, I already have a solution. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking so I could go apply it. And these aren't 500-page long documents. They're not 2, 3 sentences, highly contextual to what you are discussing and to what the specific situation is. And what happens is after we're done, the model learns and becomes even better, and then takes that documentation, applies it to the customer so that the next technician doesn't have to restart all this stuff over. And it's that level of deep intelligence, multi-layered use of data that now I can apply in real time, start to solve these level 1, level 2, level 3 technical issues based on all of this. And again, if Vertiv comes out and releases a new document for their condensers, that's automatically ingested and trained against the model so that when the next service comes in, it's already smart, a true co-pilot. I mean, that's just one scratch of the surface of the use cases that we've been working on. They are fascinating.
The thing that gets me there makes me think of we used to use this term institutional knowledge,
Mhm.
right? That business has learned, right? There's and while that business was a collection, and we'll stick with your technician, example. This collection of technicians. They're the guy that's worked there 3 weeks. There's the guy who's worked there 3 years. There's the guy that's been there 35 years, and there's this collective institutional knowledge of this firm that you go to get engineering help, and you tap into all of those individuals, and it's between their ears, and you collectively sort out the institutional knowledge and experience, and you get your problem solved. And what I hear you describing is we're going to virtualize not only all of the collective of the information, but we're going to allow it to learn off of all each other's experiences and every inbound call. So that 3 week old technician, he's getting data that goes into the model because he's hearing something different than when you go get the guy who's been doing it for 30 years and you send him out on the really complex problem. And we're going to aggregate all of that experience into one solution and ingest it through this voice recognition software that goes, oh, this is what the guy's asking about. Let me go ask everybody all at once. I mean, I know I'm being crude when I say let me go ask. Let me go query the system about all the experience I've collected and provide an answer. Virtual institutional knowledge.
Exactly. It's ingesting that institutional knowledge. And it's not just about everyone. This engine is smart enough to go into specific pieces and places of documentation to ask contextual questions that apply specifically to the conversation that's being had. It's a similar thing that we're doing with an intellectual property law firm, in just all their IP, right? All their laws, rulings, all of that stuff. I'm not a lawyer.
Mhm.
And then ingest all this other information that's publicly available to them. And then the request is like, can you write a legal document or like a legal brief, for example? We're like, don't think of it so linearly. Tell us the judge that you're presenting to. We'll ingest all of his or her rulings and actually
Yeah.
create a brief for you that is going to give you the highest possible probability of winning the case, because we now understand how this judge rules. And so it's a deep, conscious, I use that word carefully, approach to leveraging data to solve these really, really complex problems. And again, in building these models, supporting people and bringing value, we've seen all sorts of use cases, everything from like healthcare, increasing the number of people that go into bed, supporting more healthcare services and functions, using large language model training, to on the fly data changes, for example, to a virtual AI data center inspector. A company wants to build in a certain region. You, as an organization, can submit and input any document in any type of form. It takes it, quantifies and qualifies it for you, and acts as as an actual inspector and says, you're going to have problems with this regulation. You're going to have problems getting this part through this door to this actual road, because there's going to be forecasted closure, so you're not going to be able to use this highway. So it gives you this detailed perspective of not just what the issues you're going to run into, but how you can fundamentally bring capacity online faster. That's another concept that we're working on right now with a company. It's absolutely fascinating. Again, if you can hear us talking about this, this is way beyond there being a stream of data, us finding a pattern, reporting on that pattern, and then going to business as usual. This is a truly added deeper layer of context.
Fascinating stuff and an exciting time to be alive. I think change scares people. I hear people go, "Oh, well, we're going to have the laws aren't going to be able to keep up." Well, whenever have the laws been able to keep up? I mean, that's not a reason not to be charging into the future. and engaging with this technology and figuring out how it can change your business and your life and your company and your customers' experience. I mean, just it's just fascinating stuff and exciting stuff. And the rapid adoption, I think, speaks to how quickly it transforms things, right? I mean, that's the reason the adoption's through the roof. All right. Well, Bill Vitale, nothing has happened in this 40 minutes other than to convince me that we have to do more than one episode with you. So we're definitely going to have to ask you back. We will do. I can't. I've got like 19 different ideas of things we're going to have to talk about. So we're going to have to see if we can get a contract in front of you and convince you to do multiple episodes. But man, it's been awesome to have you. We're super grateful to have you with us on the podcast, but to have you in the industry and have you as a friend of Compass. So we really appreciate everything you do to promote our industry and what we do as a business. And grateful to have you on with me today.
I appreciate you, Raymond. I appreciate all of your wonderful listeners. Thank you for tuning in. By all means, don't be shy. Find me on LinkedIn or whatever it is. Let's continue these conversations. I understand that some of these new technologies you're hearing about can be scary or confusing or concerning. Let me kind of point it this way. At the latest AFCOM Data Center World event, two of the three keynotes focused on AI, specifically generative AI. And at a Data Center World conference, a generative AI company, software company, won an innovation award. This is not a fad. This is not something that's going to pass us by. It is a fundamental part of what we're going to be doing every single day. Your goal isn't to just jump on the horse or both feet in the pool. Your goal is to ask questions. Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, here. I love that. Be curious. All right. Well, Bill, awesome stuff. Thank you for having time to join us, and grateful that folks get to hear you and hear you on our little bitty platform, our little corner of the world. Awesome stuff.